If you were to take a look at all the video game franchises that began in the mid 2000s, you won't find many in better health today than God of War. Most of the games from the PlayStation 2 generation did not have what it took to outlast it. God of War, though, has endured. One of the things we can point to determine why is the strength of its idea. What story is more permanent than myth? The initial God of War games drew on Greek mythology to allow the protagonist, Kratos, to slay gods on the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation Portable, and the PlayStation Vita. When the PlayStation 4 generation came around, it very much felt like all the ichor had been drained from the series. In 2018, though, it was clear that Santa Monica Studio had found the ambrosial concoction necessary to make this series immortal. As before, the 2018 God of War game was working with myth, this time Norse, and almost as a way of tempering the story itself in the flames of Muspelheim, they made it a tale about a father and son. They had found a way out of the pre-established mythology and were now doing some of their own myth-making. Video games seldom have this much at stake. It doesn't get any bigger than Ragnarok, but we also learned before the game's release that this would be the last game in the Norse saga. There would be no trilogy. The sun and moon would be swallowed. Everything would come to an end. God of War Ragnarok deserves a place among the gods. It is the coming together of superior talents, using their various skill sets to create a game that should be sung about in every realm. There is a godlike quality about the seeming ease with which all of these individual elements come together to create something this comprehensive and sophisticated. This is a work that attempts to fuse the culturally significant with the cutting edge. The stakes were predetermined, sealed from the get-go. The only question was, could the game live up to the fate the developers had chosen for it? The answer makes itself known, as if bellowed out from the top of a mountain by a 6'4", bearded, ghost-skinned god. Yes. The word epic should, perhaps, be reserved for when we talk about stories like the Norse myths. This is one of the exceedingly rare games that earns that designation. It is long and grand and ambitious and remarkable. When we learned the subtitle of this game would be Ragnarok, it was easy to imagine Kratos fighting through the remaining gods, like getting off on every elevator floor to take out one after another on his way to the top of the building where really only a couple bosses could be waiting for him. In the opening of this game, a storm blows through and obscures everything we had preconceived about pacing. A hammer is put down on a table, almost as if to see if any other developer can pick it up, to see if they have what it takes to start a game with a boss fight that could have been the concluding battle of most every other game in existence. Mid-air, multi-phase, trash-talking, fourth wall breaking, two unstoppable forces colliding. A lightning bolt struck in the center of the earth and given a permanent shape for all to marvel at. When you read the Norse myths, it is as if being in conversation with our ancestors. We can see how they made sense of the world they lived in. They told stories to give logic to the inexplicable, and they did so in a way that was irresistible to the imagination. Conniving gods and worlds of frozen vapor and ceaseless flame. The mind's eye needn't do much heavy lifting. The stories appeared to us as if on a projector screen. Because of their vitality, because of the sensuous detail they are imbued with, it would seem like myth would be easy to adapt to other mediums. But it's because these stories are so well known and fully conceived in our collective imagination that moving them from page to somewhere else has always been a challenge. God of War Ragnarok is the work that best adheres to the worlds I'd created in my mind. The art direction is in a realm of its own. Twisting trees that stretch up into the heavens that double as homes. Riverside cities where water wheels churn and smoke wafts from the chimneys of rounded huts. Dwarven trains like Disney rides that shuttle you up a mountain and let you gaze upon incomparable vistas. Deserts where beams of light bisect the horizon. Places where the walls are covered in dazzling rainbow flecks, like a light elf glow-in-the-dark party. And skies full of stars that twinkle like Odin's eye. One of the true master strokes in the latest series of God of War games was the use of Mimir. Fastened on your hip like the most ludicrous fanny pack, this character has more to offer in one horn than most characters who have their entire body intact. He will crack jokes and fill you in on bits of lore, and most crucially, he provides an outsider's point of view that informs this father-son dynamic. He and Kratos will whisper about Atreus when he's out of earshot, with his yellow eyes which flicker and glow like two lightning bugs in a jar. He is the talking talisman who at all times reminds us what the stakes are. There aren't many games that feel this good when you are in the flow of things. Kratos' weapons are known shredders of man and God and everything in between. The axe and blades build off of one another. They are made with each other in mind. You set fire to a frost-covered enemy and launch your axe at its head from long range. Throw your axe to destroy a tree and then stick your blades into a pillar to yank it down and create a path. They have created an irresistible gameplay formula, which allows them to know exactly where to place a traversal section or a treasure chest or an out-of-nowhere boss battle. It's a formula that is part motion picture, part Metroid, part Uncharted, part Doom Eternal, and entirely its own. To me, it seems as if around the same time, the idea of the Norse duology was struck upon. A related choice to never make a decision that could be called orthodox was agreed upon. When's the last time you were playing a game and were gobsmacked by the spectacle of an encounter with regular enemies? There were times in this game when I would enter an area to find the fighting had already begun, and swarms of winged enemies would land in front of me, only to be eviscerated, while in the background, two opposing forces dueled like lost Jedi as sand poured down from a mountain like a waterfall. I lost track of how many times during combat some new element was introduced to throw gasoline on an already raging fire, and I would just say to myself, wow, they're letting me do that now? Exploration is compulsive. This is a journey, an adventure. There is no getting sidetracked. Going astray is part of the process. You must bring your boat to shore and cross beaches where dragon bones immaculately lay as if waiting to be reanimated. Free a giant whale from its shackles. Listen to Mimir asking Kratos if he ever thought about cooking meat with his scorching hot blades. Admire a jellyfish that patrols the skies like a missile seeking a target. Throughout this, composer Bear McCreary scores your wonderment with a set of songs that are shamanic and intense and glorious. Ragnarok is coming, of course, but it has always been one story that comes after a long line of other stories. It will wait for your adventure to be complete, for your stories to be accumulated. This is a game about telling stories of mercurial gods and fearsome giants, but also ones more personal in nature. What stories do we tell our children? How can we prepare them to face the world that waits for them? Stories are sustenance. They feed our curiosity and give us ways to understand our role as humans. And they also inform our worldview and make up some of the foundation of who we become. In these games, Kratos is giving his son the morals and truths that he has deemed necessary for becoming a man, and we see him struggle in real time with how to instill these properly. Some of the tasks you do in-game have real-world parallels, shutting down oil rigs or reckoning with one's own culpability in furthering the goals of an autocratic system. These are the things required to have any hope of creating a better world for your son. And Kratos wants his son's path to be easier than his own was. He wants a less violent world for him. But he must also reckon with the burden he has passed on to him by being a god. It's surprising, playing this game, how many friends Kratos now has. Once the angriest man in games, he has become one of the most reasonable. He has softened, become more patient. He seeks to avoid war rather than engage in it. Killing is simply tied up in who he is. It is his fate. The people he surrounds himself with are just as complex. They pester and cajole and question their own fates. Dialogue is whip smart and miraculously seamless. When you go off on your own to search for treasure, Atreus will explain to your waiting party that his dad just likes loot. Everyone has a role to play. Whether that role is determined by their own choices or by destiny is another story. We encounter gods who are surprisingly pragmatic, or who have been worn down by their roles. There are no caricatures. There are no mere stand-ins for a concept like war. These are beings who are more like us than they'd like to imagine. Gods who have been alive for so long that life's hardships have been impressed upon them like the tattoos on their foreheads, burdens and torments that have rendered them tired and fickle and ready to see the world they were there for the beginning of come to its end. Boss fights can and will happen at any time. They occur with an intensity and verve unique to God of War. There's so much the developers had to account for in any given boss battle. Kratos and Atreus fighting together, all the unique animations and gruesome kills, how to make Kratos demonstrate godlike strength, while also making every boss still feel like it could gain the upper hand on him. The Thor fight at the beginning of the game is a battle for the ages. It's a brash, cinematic imposing of two immutable wills, axe colliding with hammer and failing to establish superiority in a mid-air tiebreaker. Two symbols, one newer, one ancient, battling as if their lives depended on it, as if the lives of the developers depended on it. This is the visual representation of a warning shot being fired into the air and giving everyone a chance to clear out. This is the top of Mount Olympus, where Kratos threw himself from at the beginning of the very first game, being reached again, and the developers deciding that they can go even higher. God of War Ragnarok is a rebuke of media with no stakes. It asks if stories of all types are truly being told as efficiently as they could be. It is an adventure built to withstand the test of time. It has every quality we look for as gamers: the propulsive gameplay, varied fictional environments somehow imbued with the quality of verisimilitude, boss battles that awe us with their spectacle and immensity. But most of all, it is the stories that keep us playing. The stories that get us from one point to the next, that teach us how to learn from tragedy and triumph, that stay with us no matter how old we grow.